Hey guys, good morning. Welcome back to another lesson. Today is Wednesday, May the 20th. So happy Wednesday. We're almost there, 2 more days, and it's the weekend. Let's get started with our lesson for today. And our lesson for today is the same lesson or same concept that we were working on last week, and it has to do with theme. Now, for me, theme is one of the more difficult and challenging things to determine in a text because it's not specifically stated in there. So again, you and I are going to practice today and try to determine the theme of the story that we read this week. So let's talk about your goal for this morning. And your goal again is going to be to determine the theme of a text. Now remember, theme is the overall message or lesson that's in a text, and it's the message or lesson that the reader needs to know from the story. Okay, so every author, the person who writes a text, wants the reader to get a message or a lesson out of it. Now, theme is not always specifically stated. In fact, it's never really stated in a text. You're never going to see in your text the theme of this story is, because the author wants you to think about it. So you're going to have to use inferences. You're going to have to use maybe things that you've learned in life and try to determine the lesson or message that's being presented. Here's your hint. You're going to want to think about what the characters do and say, and you're also going to think about how their words and actions have changed over time. You should be asking yourself as you read each and every text, what message does the author want to get across to the reader? Now, that's how you're going to be able to determine the theme in a text. So let's head back to our story for this week. Let's practice our rereading skills so we can gain a better understanding of the theme. Freedom at Fort Mose. By September of 1754, 12-year-old Lucius Jackson and his family had been living at Fort Mose in St. Augustine, Florida for a year. They were part of a group who had escaped from a plantation in South Carolina. They had heard that Fort Mose was a place of refuge for runaways. Over the years, many people were willing to endure the treacherous journey there in return for the promise of freedom. During his time at Fort Mose, Lucius kept a diary to record what happened there. So let's pause really quickly. We know that he and his family went on a treacherous journey to get there. Remember, treacherous means that there's danger. So we know for sure it wasn't an easy journey to get to Fort Mose. 17th September, 1754. It has been raining for more than a week now. This weather reminds me of my days learning to read and write back in Charleston. When the rains came, we couldn't work in the fields and we were forced to stay in the cabins. We knew that Mr. Slocum, the landowner, detested getting his boots wet, so he rarely came to check on us. He thought that all we knew were work and obedience. Miss Celia took a great risk writing letters and words on the dirt floor of the cabin for us children to learn. She said that as the eldest member in our cabin, it was a risk she was willing to take. Learning to read was easy for me because I was so happy to learn how to turn letters into words and words into ideas. I believe that reading is a gift that cannot be measured. Mr. Samuel Cantor believes this too. He is a farmer who lives near us and who gave me this fine diary. He said, "You are doing a good thing, Lucius. In years to come, people can read about this place and understand what we have risked to gain our freedom." Now remember, we're still thinking about the theme, the overall message that's in the text. And in a minute, I'm going to give you a couple details that are going to help us determine the theme. So far we know that Lucius wasn't freely able to read and write. He had to learn on his own. So he's learning on his own. He's hiding it from the people that don't want him to learn how to read and write. So think about that so you can determine the theme. 8th October 1754. Last night I got to go on patrol with my father. My duty involved walking along the wall of the fort with him, looking and listening for anything unusual. It has been a while since we came under attack, but we cannot let down our guard. We also listen for any people who may be coming here to seek freedom, as we did about 1 year ago. While on patrol, I thought about the night my family came to Fort Mose and how scared but hopeful all of us felt as we entered through the big, heavy gates. I must stop writing now, as it is my turn today to help gather palm fronds, which we lay out in the sun to dry. Once they are dried, they can be used to repair older huts and build new ones. Each week, more people come to the fort. Our priest, Father de las Casas, keeps the records, and he tells us that there are almost 100 people now. So he's writing his diary. He says he has to stop because he has things to do. So we know that he's not this isn't happening in like a day. This is happening over years and years' time. He's developing his writing skills and his reading skills. So it's not something that's happening overnight. It's taking him a while to learn how to read and write. 26th October 1754. Last week, a new family arrived all the way from Virginia, and like everyone else, they arrived almost starved and weak beyond belief. So this goes back to the journey that we talked about earlier, that treacherous journey, and we're learning more about the treacherous journey on this page. We know that that journey involved starvation, and it made people really, really weak. Let's keep going. My mother helped the family by giving them clean clothes to replace the ones they had been wearing, and their old ones were quickly discarded. The day after they arrived, I tried to talk to the boy, who is about my age, but he ignored me. The next day, I tried again to speak to the boy whose name is Will. I showed him this diary and explained that it depicts as accurately as possible our life at Fort Mose and the people who come here. He seemed surprised and asked, "You know how to read and write?" "Yes," I told him. He looked at me without speaking, but I could see a question in his eyes. "Do you want to learn?" I asked him. "Is it not dangerous?" he asked quietly, looking around to see if anyone could hear us. So from this passage, you can already make an inference that wherever Will came from, he wasn't allowed to learn how to read and write because he's asking if it's dangerous. I smiled, remembering how long it took me to understand freedom and what it meant. "Will," I said to my new friend, "here at Fort Mose, you are free to learn, and I am free to teach you." We began our lessons right away. So you can see how excited Lucius is to teach his new friend Will the skills that he's learned over time. Let's head back to our let's head back over to our theme map, and let's try to get some details that I've already put in for you, and you and I are going to try to figure out the theme. Now, since you and I are practicing together, I went ahead and I put the details already into our map. So I'm going to give you the details, and you're going to help me think of the theme, the overall message or lesson that the author wants you to get from the story. Now remember, unfortunately, theme isn't going to be written in the text. You're going to have to think about it and really try to think, okay, there's a lesson I need to learn. What would the lesson be? So I'm giving you the 3 details. Let's try to figure out what the lesson is. Your first detail, Lucius had to learn to read and write in secret. So we know that when he was at the plantation in South Carolina, he had to do this. And then when he got to Fort Mose, it wasn't such a secret anymore, so he was able to do it right away. Now, think about when he was in South Carolina. The text tells us the exact date that he was there. Do you remember that date when he was in South Carolina? If you don't, a great strategy is to reread the text to find out when he was in South Carolina on that plantation. Well, I'll go ahead and tell you, it was September of 1754. So in September 1754, Lucius was trying to learn how to read and write in secret. And then if you remember, towards the end of the text, he was at the fort for a year already. And in that time, he got better at it. He was able to do that. So over a span of time, he was able to learn and write. He didn't give up. He was able to learn it. He kept practicing it. Let's look at our next detail. Lucius records events at Fort Mose in his diary. So again, we're still going throughout time that this is happening, right? September 1754, he's learning all of these things. The next detail, Lucius wrote, "I believe that reading is a gift that cannot be measured." Now, if you remember from the text, that statement happened on October 26, 1754. So he has taught himself how to learn and write in secret. He was able to keep a diary of his records, and he now believes that reading is so important that you can't even measure it. So what could the lesson be that the author wants us to know? Remember, theme has to do more with like life lessons. These are those lessons that life hands you. When you're faced with difficult things, you learn lessons from them. So what do you think Lucius learned? He tries to learn to read and write in secret. It doesn't happen overnight. He never gives up. What could that theme be? Do you think Lucius had to work hard? Do you think he had to put his mind into learning how to read and write? Do you think he had to keep trying to learn how to read and write in order to be able to put records in his diary? I think you're right. Absolutely. So if I had to decide the theme, I would say I know Lucius worked really hard to learn something he wasn't good at. I know he never gave up. That means he must have put his mind to it. And I know that he achieved it because he's able to now teach Will at the end of the text. So now all of those things should help you determine the theme. And remember, the theme's the overall message or lesson from a text. So let's put our theme in. When you work hard, now remember, Lucius worked hard. He was learning how to read and write in secret. He couldn't tell anybody on the plantation what was happening. And you put your mind to something. Okay, now Lucius put his mind on how to do these things. He even practices in his diary. You can achieve it. So I think that's a pretty good theme based on those details. When you work hard and you put your mind to something, you can achieve it. Now, this is a life lesson I want you to take. This is a theme just in general, maybe for your life. If you're willing to work hard, you're putting your mind to it, you're dedicated, you're able to achieve it. Especially with the times today. I know some of you are probably super sad because we're not in school and you just miss our regular daily routines. Just to know that right now, even though distance learning may not be your favorite thing, if you work hard and you put your mind to maybe a difficult assignment that's online, you'll be successful at it as long as you try, you work hard, and you put your mind to it. All right, so here is what you are going to practice today. For today, you're going to head over to Wonders and you're going to work on page 263 and 265. When you get there, you'll be reading a story called The Lost Diary of Princess Itit. And you will be answering 3 questions, and those 3 questions have to do with both of the skills that we've learned today and yesterday. So you're going to have to reread, and you're going to have to think of the theme in the text. All right, head over to Wonders now. Complete your assignment for today, which is page 263 to 265. And I will talk to you tomorrow for our last lesson of the week.